Warning. Listening to this show may result in increased levels of inspiration, motivation, and innovation. Side effects can include the immediate urge to take massive action to build a better business and life for yourself and others. You've been warned. Welcome to Influencers Radio with your host, Jack Mize.
And welcome back to Influencers Radio. Today, you know what? We have a jam-packed show. And, you know, this is actually one that you're going to want to get your notepad out of. Get your whatever you take notes on. If you're taking it on your phone, not while you're driving, get your Evernote out, whatever you use to take notes, because there are going to be some incredible nuggets in here that are going to make so much sense that you're going to want to, you're going to kick yourself. Thinking, you know, what was that he said? What was that he said? Because today, my guest is Jairek Robbins. Now, if you're not familiar with Jairek Robbins, you're going to say by the end of this, why have I not heard of Jairek Robbins? Why have I not been following Jerick? He just came out with a book called Live It: Achieve Success by Living with Purpose. This is a fantastic book. Just came out about a week ago as of the time that we are recording this show. And it's number one on several of the Amazon bestseller list. And it just has so many, from the word go, it's going to capture you, and you're going to see things that you can apply directly to your life immediately. Now, Jerick is a performance coach and a lifestyle entrepreneur. We're going to find out exactly what that is. And actually, at the young age of 23, Jerick was awarded the Congressional Award Gold Medal from the United States Congress. All right. He's traveled the globe on a ship. He's helping building schools and houses in multiple countries around the world. He's gone cage diving with great white sharks, encountering silverback gorillas. He's worked as a volunteer in undeveloped regions, and he supports a number of charities and nonprofits. And I didn't even probably get through half the list. Jerick, when are you going to stop being such a slacker? That's what I want to know.
Well, I've obviously been avoiding as much as I can in life until this point, so I figure I'll start now and see what happens. Hopefully it turns out well. Well,
that's a mouthful. Starting at 23, and now you're a young man, 30 years old, right?
30 years old, just married. I'm entering the new stage of life. Life's no longer about my fun adventure. It's about sharing it and, you know, making it, instead of my ideal day, now it's becoming our ideal day as a couple. And it's been a blessing so far. And there's been so many lessons along the way and so many amazing things. In getting started, I'll answer a question that I know a lot of people ask. Is a lot of people all over the world have asked me this, you know, what the heck is that Congressional Award Gold Medal? And we have to be very careful about how we say that to people, because it is not the Congressional Gold Medal that you get for being George Washington or someone of massive status that has changed the history of the United States of America. The Congressional Award is a gold medal that you have to earn, and it's earned through community service, physical development, personal development, and you know, it's like 400 hours of community service and 200 hours of personal development, 200 hours of physical development. And then it's supposed to be 4 nights of living in an environment unlike your own, but I ended up living 3 months in a rural Ugandan farming village, teaching organic farming there and giving back. And so some people have questioned that recently on a Fast Company article we did. They mentioned it, and someone questioned, they're like, well, why is that so special? And my answer was, well, there's 300 million people in the United States, and there's probably about maybe 5,000 that have one. I think that's kind of special.
Well, it's for doing so. It's not for helping old ladies across the street, right?
Absolutely not. It's for making a lasting difference in the community, in your own life, and in who you are as a person. And it's something that I use as an example, because I earned it when I was, you know, in my 20s. And it was something that just finishing college, I literally had 2 years to earn. And it starts off with a bronze certificate, then a silver certificate, then a gold certificate, then a bronze medal, then a silver medal, then a gold medal. So you have to go through all the ranks to get there. And you can't do it in less than 2 years. So what they want to see is, are you a young person who's focused on making the most of your life, who not only you're doing good in school, you're working very hard, you have a job, you're doing all these other things, And on top of it, you're piling on finding a way to be someone of service to yourself and the world. And I use that as an example because I started out very, very young and was completely blessed to grow up in an environment where these things were reinforced. And I realized that many, many people on this planet are not in that type of environment and don't get the type of support I got growing up or direction. My first personal development summit, I was in my mom's belly. She was teaching people how to break through their fears by breaking bricks with their bare hands. It sounds crazy, but I always say through osmosis, I had to learn something at that stage of life. And I grew up at all these seminars and learned from all these great mentors from, Marianne Williamson, Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, a lot of people who are old leaders and mentors of the personal development and spirituality field nowadays. I had the privilege of learning from growing up. And in doing that, it kind of shaped me into who I am today and gave me a great head start. And one of the biggest challenges I've heard people face is they always say, going to these seminars, reading these books, listening to these tapes, 30s, 40s, 50 years old, they always say one phrase consistently across the board. Why didn't anyone teach me this when I was younger?
That's one of the things that I think a lot of us, it's always looking back on the things you learn. And one of the things that I want to point out is, you have a very, very keen ability of taking lessons out of things. So that's the one thing that I've noticed about you. And one of the things that I really took away from your book is your ability to, regardless of what situations, the things that you did to earn that award are things that most people aren't willing to do. Award or not, they're just not willing to do that in their lives. And it's not, that it just wasn't a cakewalk, but there's some pretty severe circumstances that you were put in. One of the things that I want to talk about that you kind of talk about early on in the book, December 2003, you were told a pretty big a mouthful. You were told you had 5 days to live.
Yep. And in all honesty, that's a moment that I don't think anyone ever deserves in life to hear. I don't think it's fair for anyone in a white coat called a doctor to tell you have so many days left to live, because who knows? There's modern miracles and old miracles too, but miracles that happen that everyone, according to science, you're supposed to die, but the guy lives for 50 more years. Who knows what's really going to happen? But in that moment, it changed my whole perspective on life, because I was in my 20s. I'm a young person who's looking at life as I have forever to live. I'm invincible. I've got, all the time in the world. I'm going to go do what I want. And all of a sudden, someone tells you you have 5 days left to live, and it reshapes your thought process of what you now think is important. And
It's huge.
It is.
That's the one thing that that's the one thing that someone else can't come and say, oh, yeah, you think that's bad?
And it's true. Those words coming out of someone's mouth directed at your life makes you literally sit down and question everything. And there's many, many people who face that type of moment of life at some stage of their life, whether it's older or younger, whether it's hearing about themselves or about their child or a family member. And when you hear that, it shakes up your mind and body and puts you in a place of total uncertainty. And my situation specifically had to do with malaria. I was living in a rural Ugandan farming village, no running water, no toilets, no electricity. And I was helping out teach organic farming techniques to refertilize and regenerate the land there to get their farms back going and get their economy back going locally in Kingalombira, Uganda. Just outside of Jinja. It's about 4.5 hours outside of Entebbe, which is the main city there. It's a beautiful place to live, amazing, amazing place to be, and such happy and rich and alive culture that exists in the village. But there's also a lot of challenges, and one of the big challenges was malaria running rampant. And I got it, and it put me on my butt, and I went to go see the doctor at that time, and I remember him pulling out my blood sample and showing me I had 55,000 parasites per one red blood cell. And he said every 8 to 10 hours, the eggs hatch. When they hatch, they destroy the cell they were in. Then they go feed on water, immediately dehydrate your whole body, and then they lay eggs in all the other cells. And he said 8 to 10 hours later, it hatches again. It doubles in size. So it goes 55,000, 110,000, 220,000. And he said at the rate they're doubling, you have about 5 days. And I remember looking at the guy and being stubborn because I don't take medication. I don't take inoculations or vaccinations. I think I have a different belief growing up with my family that says your body will heal itself. As long as you nurture and take care of yourself, your body has the ability to heal and nurture itself. So I didn't take the medicine, and I wouldn't take the medicine. And the doctor finally came in with a scare tactic and said, listen, let me show you what's happening. And he showed me the whole layout. He showed me how it was going to work. And he said, listen, if you don't take the medicine now, you got 5 days left. Now I remember I was stubborn. I said, 5 days till what? And he says 5 days till you die. And I remember hearing those words and being like,
To most, that's like an insurmountable. That's like one of the biggest obstacles you could face, right?
Absolutely.
And so there's a lot of people out there that face a lot of different obstacles that they think is, wow, this is a really big obstacle. But what I love is you said something in your book that you had three choices when you were faced with that. And as soon as you said these three choices, I immediately thought these three choices applied to every single obstacle that anyone could have. And it really is three choices. So talk about those three choices that you had, and it really does. It's the same three choices that everyone has, but some of them just don't give themselves that third option.
And even more so, it's three choices that everyone has every day they wake up in life. And when you wake up in life, if there's an obstacle, if there's a challenge, even the opportunity to take life on, there's really three choices. One, give up. Believe you have no control, believe there's nothing you can do about it, and just give up. And just allow life to push, pull, kick, throw, do whatever it's going to do with you, and whatever happens, happens. You have no control whatsoever, just whatever. Option two, the cross finger method.
Which is, I think, the most popular.
It is the most, that's what most people do. You just cross your fingers and hope it goes well. It's not that you're out of control. You're hoping a lot. You hope it turns out. You hope it goes well. You hope something good happens. Or option number three, find a reason. Find a reason that's so much bigger than just you, but find a reason to live. Find a reason to fight. Find a reason to go do what you want to do and fight like hell. And find a way to make it the way you want it to be. Find a way to create the life you want, to get the results you desire and deserve, to make it happen. And I laid there in a hospital bed, and the really hard part about being in a moment like that wasn't necessarily that I was sick, wasn't necessarily that I was told I had so many days left to live. It's the thought of being alone on the other side of Earth, where you have no family, no friends, no community whatsoever to support you, to nurture you, to be around, to hold your hand, to even talk to. You're in, a rural farming village, a beat-up old little clinic. You're lying there by yourself. No one speaks English. And you're like, well, if this was my last 5 days, is this how I want to go out? Coming back to those three questions, every morning when you wake up, you don't realize how many resources you have around you. For most people, you have family, you have friends, you have community, you have coworkers, you have your children. You have so many people around you that can support you like nothing else. I was in a place where I'm all by myself, and some people might feel all by themselves when they're sitting in their own home surrounded by loving family members and friends. But you got to remember, when you have those support systems around you to go through a challenging moment, reach out to them. And you got to first decide, though. You got to decide, hey, are you just going to give up? Are you going to cross fingers and hope something good happens, or are you going to find a reason to fight like hell? My urge to you is find a reason to live for that's so much bigger than yourself, that you're willing to fight for, that you're willing to stand up for. And when you find that deep reason why, it'll drive you through even the hardest challenges you face in life, even the most tricky moments, even the moments when it feels like nothing's going to work. When you have a reason to fight for that's bigger than you, it'll inspire you to keep moving when everyone else quits. And that's where the book starts. Find that reason.
And that right there is what really gave me the reason to not put this thing down, because that's what hooked me. I thought, okay, I'm in, because, one of the things this is a lot different. I hate to even classify this as a motivational book, because a lot of motivational, self-help type books, they're full of what you should be doing. But this one has an equal dose of how you should be doing it. Not just what to do, but how to do, right? And I think one of the first things that you go into that just made so much sense is kind of breaking things down. And I kind of look at this. I think what changed my perspective, and I think anyone that reads this and gives them even more hope and sees the success ahead of them, is the way that you kind of split up the ideal day versus a dream life. That most people, they focus on this dream life. They focus on this big picture or hope or wish or this is what I would like to do. But that's one of the things that made so much sense. And not that you just said, here's what you should be doing, but you actually talked about how to do that. Can you go deeper into that concept of that ideal day versus a dream life?
Absolutely. So a lot of people have dreams, and a lot of people have goals and visions and exciting things they want to do 20 years from now. The challenge is you're not living today 20 years from now. You're not there yet. You do have to think about the future, and actually, that's the last chapter of the book. I'll give you a simple layout of how the book's made. Chapter 1 is about how to design your absolute ideal day. Because my thought is most people try to take a giant bite and figure out their whole life in one chunk. And if you can't figure out what one perfect day would be, how in the world are you going to figure out what your ideal or perfect life is going to be? It's too big of a chunk to chew. So my thought is start with your ideal day. That's chapter 1. Chapters 2 through 10 is how to turn that day into absolute reality. And I learned through my own experience, and as excited as I am to know that I live my ideal day where we travel around the world, we do what we love, we give back, we have a company that gives back and make a difference in people's lives. We take the money from that company and then donate it and invest it into charities, nonprofits, and different ways to support other people in communities who need it more than we do. And in that circle, we built our dream life to travel the world, help people, and have a hell of a lot of fun doing it. Crazy, wild adventures, fun stuff involved. Now, while doing that, that's exciting. What's even more exciting is seeing how it changed the lives of our clients, seeing how it changed the lives of the people that this message touches, which is so much more exciting to me. You know, people who are working on Wall Street who, compared to the majority of the planet, are unbelievably, quote unquote, successful. They make, 7-figure bonuses a year. They've got massive paychecks every month. They have multiple residences. They travel the world, go to luxurious parties, the whole spiel. And having people like that reach out and say, listen, I'm very, quote unquote, successful at what I do, but I'm not happy. And me being able to share this message with them that's in the book, and all of a sudden, 2.5 years later, they're now waking up and living a life that makes them feel totally and absolutely fulfilled and happy with who they are as a person and what they're doing in the world. They're building companies that are meaningful and making a lasting difference that they believe in. It's beautiful to see. A young girl I was working with shared the same message with. She was dreaming of finding a relationship, and I remember, I think 9 or 10 months later, I forget the time range, but she literally came back and she not only found a man, but they were engaged and getting married. And she had spent years searching for this guy. And all of a sudden, by getting everything right in her own life and starting to live her ideal day and turning it into her ideal life vision, all of a sudden, instantly the guy shows up that she's looking for. So these types of magical things happen, which fill my heart with joy and passion and purpose to keep delivering this message. But the way the book is created, chapter 1 is your ideal day. Chapters 2 through 10 is how to literally turn that day into reality, everything you're going to need along the journey. And chapter 12, the final chapter, is how to then use this process to now map out your ideal life, so 5, 10, and 20 years, and use the same tools in chapters 2 through 10 and 11 there of how to turn that life vision into reality. But we start with the day. And the reason we start with the day is because so many people, like you said, get so consumed with trying to make this perfect plan for their entire life that they forget about today. And they just, they live in what we call the rat race, where they're saying, okay, I'm just going to keep working and working and working and working and working. And someday, this magical place in the future, I'll finally get to live a life that I really enjoy. I'll finally get to do something I really want to do. When I was faced with that moment of, 5 days left to live, all that someday stuff disappears. Because I realized in that moment that there is no promise or guarantee of anything except for right now in this moment. And the next statement I say isn't going to sound very motivational, but you could walk outside and get hit by a bus today, 20 minutes from now, 5 minutes from now. You never know that. So if your whole life's happiness and fulfillment is delayed on some dream of some day from now, 10 years, 20 years, whatever down the future, you're betting a lot. I mean, you might go 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and you're, 22 years you get the dream, and 21 and a half years you die. Well, was it worth it? Who knows? So my thought is, how do you create a day, just an outline of a day, that's so fulfilling and so rich and so filled with meaning and purpose that you would trade literally nothing on earth for it? Meaning, no matter how simple or how complex this day is, you can create whatever day you want. And for most people, it's not that crazy. It's not that complex. It's usually pretty simple and unique, but it's meaningful to them. It's spending time doing something you love with the people you love, in the place you love, and the locations on earth that you love, stuff that makes you feel fulfilled and alive. And whatever that is for you, whether it's taking yoga classes or writing a book or teaching a course or attending a course or going to work and working on the business you love, whatever it is. But I remember helping melt this concept out for people and walking them through, the moment you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you'd see? Where would you go? Who would be there? How would you feel? What would be possible on that day? And then we take you through literally a visualization process from early in the morning till all the way late at night. We talk about every aspect of your life. What are all the things that are going to make that day magical for you? Now, for some people, when they hear this concept, it's not that far off from the way they live their life now. It's a couple of very simple fine tunes, and bingo, they're living this perfect day. For other people, they're nowhere close to this perfect day they've written down. And that's where I was when I started. I came out of working a job that I was good at but not in love with. I transitioned to working 3 jobs, living in the front den of a house, trying to pay off some debt while I started my own business. And as I'm working these 3 jobs, one was inside sales, one was coaching, which I loved, and one was stuffing boxes at a warehouse, and which I hated. And I remember working these 3 jobs and looking at my life, living in the front den of a house. I had 3 roommates and a curtain as my door of my bedroom. I also had a roommate who was depressed for about 6 months, who listened to Sex and the City every day right outside of my curtain. So that song is stuck in my head forever. But while I was there building my little business online in my spare time, like I had any working 3 jobs, I remember looking around and seeing my vision of traveling the world, helping people, making a difference, giving back, having the ability to give something back, even monetarily at that point. I didn't have any extra. And looking at my actual life in that moment and being like, wow, this is nothing close to what I'm dreaming of. And it was almost discouraging in that moment because it felt so far away from what my dream was. Now, here's what's crazy is you fast forward 18 months. I remember just getting done giving a speech to like 300 people. I had been hired to give a speech and teach people of how I grew my coaching business so fast online in London, hopping a train under the river over to Paris, sitting, having lunch under the Eiffel Tower, taking out my journal that I wrote this original vision in, and reading my vision of traveling the world and helping people, getting paid, and then using the money to give back and make a meaningful difference in the world. And I remember having this gigantic smile on my face and realizing 18 months later, it happened. I was living it.
That's remarkable and so inspiring. And, you said something that I think so many people face, that when you actually stopped and thought about this, that the grind that you were in was not even close to what would be your ideal day. And I think some people are afraid to look, right? Because they'll be faced with that. And so I know there's a lot of people that are thinking, you know what, but Jerick, I got on the hamster wheel. All right. I'm on the hamster wheel. I can't just get up and go in any direction that I want to do this. And one of the cruel ironies of success that you seem to be able to beat, because you had the same, even probably more obstacles and things in your way than a lot of people feel they think that they do. But one of the cruel ironies of success is that success, encompass your health, your fitness. It encompasses success in personal relationships, success in finances and money. And one of the things that never seems to get to in balance is to have those 3 at the same time. And you talk about in the book how people are generally sacrificing 1 or 2, of those for the other, that it's so difficult for people to achieve that, together. And I think that some of the things that you have in there are real metrics, because most of the people think their job, career, making money equals that's what I have to do. And then, you talk about being able to go out and do what you want to do and help others and have these missions. And passion and mission, that equals get to do. And a lot of people can't reconcile that you can actually, your have to do and get to do's can actually kind of be folded together if you do it right. So let's start with that on how first do you get over the obstacle of sacrificing health, relationships, or finances to be able to balance those out and actually achieve success in each of those areas? Absolutely.
And understanding the natural tendencies and natural stages of life gives you some ability to calm down and not feel like you're out of balance. Most people talk about, work-life balance. I learned from a great mentor of mine. He's like, balance is boring. He's like, I don't know about you, but if you ever got on one of those teeter-totters as a kid and you sat there with a friend and you're like, okay, let's make it perfectly balanced. And then you work for 20 minutes, you get the thing perfectly balanced, and no one's going up, no one's going down, you're just perfectly balanced. And he's like, what do you want to do? Just sit there for the next 3 hours staring at each other? He said, no, that's boring. He's like, you're going to shake it up, you're going to jump, and then they're going to jump, and then you're going to shoot in the air, and they're going to shoot in the air. And he's like, that's what makes the ride exciting. He's like, what's this whole perfect balance stuff? And he's like, that's life. You know, you're going to go to work on your body, and all of a sudden it's going to jack up your financial business stuff because you weren't focused on it. Then you go, oh, shoot, I need to make more money. And you go back that direction, and your relationship starts to slack. He's like, that's natural. He said, thinking anything that is not natural is what makes you feel that something's wrong. He's like, knowing that it's going to be out of balance is okay. Now, once you let go of trying to be perfect, and you're like, hey, you know what? It's natural. Then you got to figure out, and this is the important factor, not how do I make all these major categories of my life perfect. How do I continually to improve on all of them constantly? Doesn't mean they're perfect. Doesn't mean they're perfectly balanced. Doesn't mean that your whole life is working perfectly at all times. All it means is every single day you're working to improve what you have. If you come up with a strategy that scatters your ability throughout the major points of your life. And when I say major points, I mean major foundational points of life. Your health, your emotions, your family life, your personal, intimate relationship, if you have one, your professional life, what you do that you call work or your business, you know, your finances, your spiritual life, these major categories of life, the big important stuff. If you come up with, let's say, 1 or 2 actions you can take each and every day to make a little bit of progress in each one of those major categories of life, you'll always be growing as a human being, and you'll always be making progress. And, you know, all the studies show, all the science shows that progress is what causes people to feel happy. Progress is what causes people to feel alive. So to start with, you're right. When you work on one thing, something else is going to slide a little. When you work on the other thing, it's going to slide a little. Instead of freaking out that it's sliding, know that it's absolutely and totally natural. It's normal. That's how it happens. Now, once you have that, drop trying to make this perfectly balanced wheel of life or this perfectly organized, you know, balanced piece, you know, work-life balance. Now, focus on just improving constantly. Now, what's funny is when you let go of trying to make it perfectly balanced and you just focus on constantly improving it, what ends up happening is it balances out pretty well. It's one of those weird concepts of life that when you stop trying to make it perfect and you just start progressing and making progress over perfection, all of a sudden it starts to become pretty freaking perfect without even thinking about it.
Don't try so hard. That's the message. I mean, that you get from even, you know, starting from the ideal day. What can you do to make, not do everything that is required to make that your ideal day, but let's do something to add to making it go towards your ideal day.
Even once you paint this perfect picture of your ideal day, instead of trying to make the entire day perfect tomorrow, just say, hey, what's one thing I could do in my health that would move me more, you know, closer to how I was in that vision? What's one thing I could do today in my emotions that would make me feel even more like I felt in that vision? What's one thing I could do in my professional life that would move me even closer to what I was doing in my ideal day vision? And you see the pattern here where it's just one thing every day. And that habitual pattern and ritual you start to create is what creates the rapid results you're looking for. It's what creates the momentum that moves you so quickly to turning that day into reality. But most people think it's going to be this huge, massive shift one day and one moment that happens. In actuality, it's the little consistent things stacked on top of each other that build this massive foundation for your life.
Well, I think that, you know, when you talk about one thing, what's the one thing? I think it's very important, and I want you to kind of give an overview of this, because you talk about there are major things and there are minor things, and they're not all positive. They're not all things you should do. That there's also things that you should not be doing, right? So kind of go over that concept about when you talk about things about the majors and the minors.
Absolutely. I learned this from a very, very old mentor of mine who's passed away now. But, you know, there's a gentleman who's huge in the personal development arena. He says, Jim Rohn, he says, most people major in minor things, meaning most people invest so much of their time, so much of their energy, so much of their thought process in the things that really don't matter. And, nowadays, if you want to look closely at what those things are, and I'll be very careful because I don't want to offend anybody out there who's in any of these industries, but what level you are in World of Warcraft is seriously not going to affect your health over the next, 3, 4, 5 years of your life. But if you have a child or a young adult, or if you are an adult who plays this, if someone ever unplugs your game console or your computer and it deletes what level you were on, you want to see how people react crazy? Watch, a 15-year-old, even a 40-year-old, if you unplug their game console and you knock them back 5 levels in World of Warcraft, you will see someone go emotionally berserk. Why? Because they're so emotionally invested in this thing called a video game. It doesn't exist. That literally it feels like you've stolen something out of their identity of who they are as a human being when you mess it up. And it's fascinating, the psychological attachment people have nowadays to stuff like this, that in the long run, I know it's meaningful, I know it takes a lot of effort and a lot of energy and a lot of attention to get yourself there, and I appreciate all the effort and attention and focus. The part that I get stuck on is if you ask yourself the question, 40 years from now, how much is this going to positively or negatively affect my life? The answer is very little. That is going to have very little effect on who you are as a human being 25, 30, 40 years from now. Compared to if you spent that same 7 hours of gameplay this afternoon going and working out, spending some time learning how to do yoga or meditation or something mindfulness to fill your mind and clear your mind and get yourself to a really solid space mentally and emotionally. If, learning how to build a business online or grow a business or start a business or go work at something, if you learn how to build something, create something, or deliver something of value to society, how would that change your life 20 years from now? You'd be a local community leader. You'd be someone people look up to. All that significance and all those emotional things that video game fulfills, you get that in real life for who you are naturally as a human being. You wouldn't have to try to seek out significance. You would be a person of significance in the community because of the difference you truly made in the lives of the people around you. If you just spent that same time doing something of value, focusing on the majors of who you are and showing other people how to do the same. Something that simple of a shift can make a massive difference. The scary statistic is in a strong gamer culture nowadays, the average young person will spend 10,000 hours playing video games by the time they're 21 years old. Just to equate how much time that is, that's the same amount of time a young person would spend from the 5th grade all the way through high school if they had perfect attendance for all those years.
That's staggering.
That's how much time people are playing video games by the time they're 21 years old. It's scary. And if you're spending that much time, 10,000 hours, if you read the book, I think it was Outliers, is the amount of time it takes to become an absolute standout expert at something. So we have people who are majoring in life and becoming experts at video games. They're becoming experts at, Grand Theft Auto and Medal of Honor, shooting people and blowing stuff up. Why not become an expert in your own life and create the type of life that would make you so fulfilled and so alive and so rich from within that no one could ever take that from you? No one could ever unplug it and knock you back 3 levels because it's your life that you've created from within that really, really, truly is something you will have forever as long as you're on this planet.
Well, I think that's an important point because so many people, they think, I don't have time I'd love to go out and help and do things. I'd love to really get, behind my passion, but, I'm too busy with, my work and video games. And to me, it all comes down to the difference between, when people say, well, Jack, I've done everything I can do to do this. And what they are really saying is, well, Jack, I've done everything I'm willing to do to do this. And the fact is, when you look around, you see someone like you that, at this young, at 23, 5 days to live from malaria, had some big decisions to make, which, the point that you brought up is when you're faced with that, it kind of makes all your other troubles seem kind of trivial and allows you to focus on, what's really important. And there's another probably same, a 23-year-old person that's doing something so insignificant, but that's taking up so much of their time that doesn't allow them to go out and be that person that they can be. And I think, that right there is an example of one of the things, the really powerful statements that you had in your book was that every person you meet is either a warning or an example. And I think that's important to not only, because a lot of people, when you say that, they start looking outward, right? They say, oh, let me think of the people I hang out with. Which one of those are warnings or which one are examples? But I think one of the things that you say is, no. Which one are you?
Yep. And it's something I urge people, and everyone knows the answer to that question and their instincts and their gut. Most people don't want to listen to it. Because when you ask the question, and here's the simplest and easiest way to ask the question is, based on your goals, based on who you want to be in the world. I think it was either Wayne Dyer or one of those people of the industry who said, listen, if you want to work backwards, it might have been Stephen Covey said, if you want to work backwards, what would you want people to say about you, of who you were as a human being at your funeral? Meaning 50, 60, 70, 80 years from now, you pass away. How do you want people to remember who you are as a person? A new updated way of saying that is the way a good friend of mine said, which is, if you were to die, how do you know if you really lived? Here's how the way to know if your life was worth it. Did you really live? Did you really love? Did you really matter? That third question of how would you want to matter on this planet? What difference would you want to make? Who would you want to be? Or what would you want your legacy to be? Based on that, saying, okay, based on who I want to be, the mark I want to leave on this planet, right now, the way I'm choosing to live my life, am I being an example of how to live your life to become that kind of person? Or am I being a warning of how not to live your life? And if people answer that question every day, it's a very easy way to guide yourself towards doing the right thing. Again, does that mean you're going to be perfect all the time? Not a chance. I've personally, in my own experience, I can't speak for everybody, but I've never met someone who has always done the right thing all the time, everywhere, every place, and every single moment. Everyone has their moment of screwing up. There's nothing wrong with that. If you take that gut check and you say, listen, I'm being a pretty big warning right now. Well, here's the good news. You have right now in this moment to change your path. To say, listen, I'm no longer going to be a warning. I'm going to choose to be an example. How am I going to do it? I'm going to clean up my act. I'm going to get my stuff together. I'm going to focus on how I want to live my life. And every day I'm going to take one step forward to make progress towards turning my ideal vision into reality. And if you look at your life and you're honest and you're not being overly confident, but you're just being honest with yourself, you're like, listen, I'm being a pretty good example right now. Again, say, listen, how could I make it better? How could I improve? How could I continue to stay on this path that I've worked so hard to build and continue to keep moving forward? The tricky part is there's handfuls of people. I have the privilege to go speak to an organization next month called Future Docs. And these are 4,000 students from around the country who are in high school who've decided they're going to be, go into the medical profession. They're straight A students. They're some of the hardest working young people out there. They all have to qualify. They need letters of recommendation by their teachers and professors, teachers to get into this event they're doing. And there's Nobel laureates. There's all kinds of very, very, very high-level people in education and science that are speaking. And I have the privilege to address these young people. And the tricky part is when you're already doing something that puts you in the place of being an example, sometimes you're overly critical. And sometimes doing all the right things, but being so critical on yourself is actually being a warning. Which is tricky because you're doing all the right stuff and you're a beautiful example of how to succeed in school, how to get great grades, how to do all this stuff. But emotionally, you're a warning because you're constantly picking at yourself. You're constantly beating yourself up. You're constantly tearing yourself down. So here's the other place to use this question is comb through what we refer to as those major areas of your life and say, listen, I'm going to be honest with myself. Overall, I think I'm a pretty good example of life. But I'm going to now comb through each category of my life and see if there's any place that I can improve on that I might be being a little bit of a warning. If you're overly critical of yourself, you're being a warning. You need to learn how to relax and enjoy yourself more and to really enjoy the process of kicking butt and getting great grades and growing who you are as a person. If you're overly critical on your sales techniques, you're overly critical on yourself as being an entrepreneur in the world, you need to learn how to enjoy the process more for those guys out there And for you ladies, I know you all have that little voice that constantly picks at yourself. You need to learn how to enjoy that process and how to enjoy critique from yourself and from others, and really listen to it as ways of people investing in you to try to make you better versus tearing you down or showing you what's wrong. And you start to learn these very simple techniques and how to integrate them into who you are as a person. And all of a sudden, everything becomes about helping life improve and helping grow and helping love and expand in who you are as a person and what you do on this planet.
Well, I think it's important to point out that the example or the warning, there is no neutral. Neutral's not a choice, right? Yeah, you're one or the other.
Yep. The easiest way to think about that is everything in life is either growing or it's dying. If you don't believe me, watch a tree. It's not that complicated. It's either growing and giving fruit and expanding and literally, getting bigger and giving great fruit and offspring all day and all year, or the moment it stops growing and giving fruit, it instantly starts dying. There is no transition period where a tree just sits still. It's either growing or dying. Now, here's what's scary. Sometimes trees decay from the inside out, meaning on the outside, it still looks like this powerful, strong, healthy tree, but on the inside, it literally is decayed. So much so, and I learned this actually when I was stacking lumber up in Canada for 3 months, doing a hard labor job there. They had me cut down a tree one time, and I think they were joking with me, but I thought they were serious. So took an axe, went to go hack at a tree, and I swung this axe and hit the tree. And when I hit the tree, the axe literally went straight through the tree. And I probably almost took my own head off because it came through so fast. And they were all laughing like crazy, all the guys on the work site. And I didn't know what happened. What it was on the outside, this tree looked really strong, but on the inside, it completely rotted away. And the crazy part is some people's lives are like that. You look at them on the outside, and they look like this strong person living this amazing life, but on the inside, because they stopped growing, because they stopped feeding their mind and their emotions and their spirit every day, because they stopped really finding ways to improve who they are as a person, they started to decay from within. And over the years, even though the outside shell looks so strong and healthy, the inside has been torn down, and there's really nothing there anymore. It's empty. And all it takes is one strong strike of life, and all of a sudden it puts them on their knees. So my thought is never be that kind of person. Always be the type of person that's filling and fueling every single day of your life to make sure that you're filled up and fueled up with so much, powerful, positive information that drives you forward. It nurtures and grows your spirit and your mind and your mental capacity, that it causes you to become the best version of yourself. Now, how do you do that? Another thing we talked about in our book is there's a chapter on mental strength when I talk about when I was told I had 5 days left to live, and I made the decision that I was going to find a reason to live and fight like hell. I had to figure out what were the things I did every single day to actually build that mental strength. And we go through a whole variety of options, but just a few of my favorites we talked about is, number one, having a ritual every single morning to start your day off. And we actually wanted to help people with this, so we created a free gift. I'm sure we'll tell you about it at the end of the podcast here, but a free gift, which is a simple 5-minute audio track you can pop in every day and listen to. And all it does is help walk you through a simple visualization of how your ideal day that day is going to be. Map it out in your head. It always starts with a vision. It always starts with a roadmap of where you want to go and what you want to do. So that's what we start with. Start off every single day by literally outlining how you want your day to be. From there, you got to take time for gratitude. There's numerous studies that show if people who've gone through, depression or gone through any type of struggle in their life, when they spend time keeping a gratitude journal, it massively increases their overall attitude and overall happiness over, a simple period of time, 10 days, 5 days, 20 days. So it's amazing. It's simple. You've got to start off with your vision. Next, go to gratitude. Fill your mind for at least 3 minutes, ideally out loud so you can feel it and experience it, but speak aloud everything you're grateful for. Once you have that, now start to use affirmations or incantations, these phrases to build into your nervous system how you want to feel and the thoughts you want to think. I mentioned earlier that we all have that little voice in our head that when we least expect it starts to beat us up and, nitpick and tear us down. It's something you should have done this or you should have done that. And it's this annoying little voice that beats us up every now and then. So you want to override that voice by filling it and flooding it with all these amazing thoughts that you want to think. So that's the next step. Fill it up. And then the final step is go do something physically that activates your mind and body and gets you ready for the day. So we talk about these different types of rituals in this chapter, and it's stuff that I did literally every single day to get myself on track. And I started that, didn't realize this, that I've literally been doing these types of things for about 12 years now. And I have many, many friends who, they were my roommates when I was living in that little room in the front den of the house. They were my friends when I could barely run a mile, and then watched me all of a sudden start running marathons and triathlons within, 6 months, a year later. They watched me transform as a human being, and it's not because I got freaking lucky. It's because I started building these little tiny rituals in the major categories of my life that have caused me to become who I am today. I'm not saying I'm the perfect example for everybody. I'm just saying, hey, I figured out what worked for me, and I'm trying to inspire and help you figure out what's going to work for you.
Habits can be good things. That's, most people think of habits as bad habits. You always, hear about bad habits, but developing those habits,
people
make a big positive.
I've met people all the time who say, I have a problem with addiction. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with addiction? Just get addicted to the right stuff. Nothing wrong with addiction.
You're addicted to helping others. And I don't want to make that sound like a, as light as it is. But, one of the things when you mentioned about, at the end of your life, do you matter? And one of those things that I think really comes to create that feeling that you have mattered is how you affect other folks. And one of the things that you do is so much of what you do is not just about, your growth, but your growth puts off that fruit like the trees that nourishes so many others, because of what you do. And that's where I think the matter, if you're going to matter, really comes into play. And I want to make sure that I get you to talk about before we wrap it up is that a lot of people, they keep everything when they think about their growth and getting better, and their ideal day is, if they don't think about it, they're thinking about, it's all about them. It's a very, my ideal day, what do I need? How do I need to do this? But one of the things that you talk about in that book that seems to just change things exponentially is the activating your why. And I think it'd be a disservice if we didn't at least touch on that, because all of this stuff is about, been about you, how to better yourself and grow yourself and do this. But it kind of takes care of itself almost once you activate that why.
It absolutely does. We share a beautiful, beautiful story of a father and son who, Dick and Rick Hoyt, if you haven't heard of them, it's a son who was born where his umbilical cord was wrapped around his head and neck, and he was born where the doctor said he was pretty much going to be a vegetable. He wasn't going to be able to talk or walk or do anything on his own. And they said, why don't you put him into a home and just leave him there? And the mom and dad looked at each other and said, there's no way we're going to do that. We're going to raise him and treat him just like all of our other kids. So when they went to the beach, they took him with them. When they played hockey, they stuck a hockey stick in his hand in a wheelchair and pushed him around like all the other kids. And finally, I think it was Tufts University up in Massachusetts area. They created a machine called the Hope Machine that allowed him, through literally a little pad on his forehead, to move a cursor and spell things out one letter at a time on a computer, to spell out a sentence, and then hit a button and the machine would speak the sentence out loud on behalf of him so that he could talk. So imagine having to talk one letter at a time, where you sit there and bump a machine with your head to spell out an entire sentence and then hit the button and then it speaks out loud for you. And this young man, he went to high school, and when he was at high school, he heard about a young boy who got in a car accident, was paralyzed, and they were going to have a benefit run for him. And so he said, Dad, I want to run in it. So his dad said, okay, I'm not a runner, but I'll push you. And that was the very first race they ever did. And he pushed him. And when they got home, he typed to his dad. He said, Dad, when you were pushing me in the race, I felt like a normal boy. I didn't feel like I was disabled. And that's all his dad had to hear, to know that it made his son feel alive and normal and healthy. And all of a sudden, that was it. That was his inspiration. That was his reason why. Since then, they've competed in thousands of races from marathons, triathlons, even Ironman competitions, where he pushes, pulls, and bikes his son, a 100-pound son, through the entire Ironman. Now, I know people in their 20s and 30s who barely finish, if not don't even finish, the entire Ironman on their own. Imagine having to carry, push, and swim, towing an extra 100-pound son of yours through the race. And it's amazing. And when you look at it, what's fascinating about the story is it's so beautiful to see how much, a father is willing to do to give his son the ability to feel alive and feel normal and to feel like he's just human, living life. But the beautiful part is how it affected and how it's literally saved his father's life. Because now they're in, I believe, their 60s and 40s, and his father's still running the Ironman. They just ran the Boston Marathon a couple months ago, and they completed it. And it's keeping his father healthy and alive because he's staying healthy to run and push and pull and drag his son through all these things. It's keeping him healthy and alive, which is causing his life to extend even further. It's beautiful how it's a reciprocal giving that's happening there, even though it feels like he's just giving to his son. It's really beautiful. But I'll tell you where that lesson really came from deeper in my life is we share that story in the book. We share a couple other stories of how it affects your ability to overcome fear and to break through obstacles. But where that story came from in my life is I looked around and I have two people that I tremendously look up to. My grandmother on my mom's side and my father on obviously my father's side. And I look at these two people because they've both been able to achieve what most people call massive success. Most people have never heard of my grandma, even though, she's won every award you could imagine in any sales team she's ever been on. Has the key to the city of Los Angeles. She's Businesswoman of the Year in LA. She was on the cover of Newsweek magazine. She's in her mid-70s, still cold calls 3 days a week and makes multiple six figures a year in her business. Not only that, she's an awesome grandma and takes amazing care of mentoring and growing and nurturing her entire family. And what's amazing is when I looked at what caused her to be so successful, it was always what she did with the money when no one was paying attention. She never told anyone about it. She never gloated about it. She just quietly did it when no one noticed. And I remember one day I was helping clean her office, and I knocked over an envelope, and a bunch of receipts came out. When I sorted through them, she was paying for her secretary to go through college, her books, her tuition, the whole thing, not telling another person, nobody. And when I asked her about it, she's like, hey, doesn't matter. Leave it alone. Don't say anything. I was like, wow, that's amazing. And I wondered how many other things she was doing that she never told anyone about. And it created a belief inside of me that life supports that which supports life. And I said, where else is this true? And I looked for the next most successful person in my family. And, I looked at my dad. And doesn't matter who he is. I'll just tell you a little bit about him to see how big of a gap he crossed. 16 years old, he was living in the back of his car. And at 16 years old, he had actually been touched earlier when he was about 12, 13 years old. His family was going through struggle around Thanksgiving time. And a random stranger came to their door with a bag of groceries because he said, hey, I heard your family's going through a struggle. I just wanted to come give you guys this gift from the community. It's from a stranger. I'm just delivering it. And I remember my dad being touched by that moment, noticing that strangers care about who I am and who my family is. Therefore, I'm going to find a way to care about them in the future. And it sparked something inside of him that at 16 years old, when he's living in the back of his car, homeless basically, working his door-to-door sales job, selling cassette tapes back in the day. That was his job. The indestructible way to preserve your music for life was the pitch. But when he was doing that, he was saving money to give away to a family on Thanksgiving who was in need. And I remember I met a friend of his and asked about it, and she goes, yeah, I punched him that day. And I'm like, don't you realize you're in need? You're homeless. And he started laughing. He goes, no, I'm saving to give to a family that's really in need, kids and a mom and a dad, like people who really need it because it's Thanksgiving and they need it. And it's like, what a crazy person would be homeless but saving money to give to someone else who they think is in more need than them. Fast forward that now he's got 22 companies with a combined yearly revenue of over $6 billion. And what's amazing is people watch how much he's grown over these years. What they fail to recognize is the real why underneath of what inspires that growth. It's always been about finding a way to give more than he could ever receive. And what's amazing is I remember he gave a speech to 95 fifth graders in a really tough part of Texas where the dream of their parents was that they would go get a good job at like McDonald's because at least it had benefits. And he scratched his head and said, that's way too low of a standard for these kids. There's way too much potential in this room for that to be the dream. He walked out of the room, walked back in the room and said, this is crazy, and I know you're not old enough to sign a contract, but if you sign it, I'll stick to it. He said, listen, here's what it'll be. Good citizenship rules. Be average, community service, being a good person, doing the right things. He said, you do all this all the way through high school. He said, if you get into college, I'll pay for it. 95 of them. Now, most adults worry about either paying off their own education, paying off one child's education, which is a big feat, or trying to figure out how to cover it. He's promised 95 little kids at once he'd pay for all of them to go to school. He walked out of the room, he got a call from his lawyer and accountant. They said, do you know how much money you just put on the line? He said, I don't care. I'll figure it out if they figure it out. And what happened was 14 of them made it all the way through, all the community service, be average, the whole spiel. He paid for all of them to go to college. 4 of them got their master's he paid for, and 1 got her PhD. He paid for the whole thing. And what's amazing is they look at the outside results he achieves financially, these huge numbers. What they fail to see is what's driving it from within is his ability to give back even more than anyone else would ever expect or imagine him to do. I think this year, last year, I know he fed about 4 million people out of pocket through an organization here in the U.S. where he wrote the check himself every month, and he made it a point to help feed 4 million people out of his own pocket. So people don't see that, and he rarely talks about it. So I like to brag on behalf of him for it, not to boast, but just to tell people, like, if you want to see that secret to meaning and purpose, that secret to living, it's giving. It's finding a way to support and give more, and it goes back to that phrase, life supports that which supports life. When you make your reason why about giving and serving so much more than just yourself, you will have access to tools and knowledge and skills and little insights from life and the universe around you that will support you in ways you could never imagine. And that's something we drive home in the book, and we teach you how to identify your own why and how to connect to it and how to amplify it through different ways we've learned over the years. But it's amazing. When someone taps into that reason why, it will propel you past obstacles that used to seem, taller than the Great Wall. You'll fly over those things like they're barely a speed bump once you find that reason why.
Well, I think that completely gives the meaning to the title of the book, Live It, Achieve Success by Living with Purpose. And that word purpose takes on a whole new meaning when, we see what you actually meant by that rather than just the words. That living with purpose is the catalyst to the growth, to the success. And it's not just an important recipe ingredient in that recipe. It is the most important ingredient in that recipe, as far as, I'm concerned. Jairek Robbins, what can folks do to find out more about getting this book, find out more about what you are doing? Because you have so many things out there, the YouTube videos, there's just so much great content and information. TED Talks, I think, some great stage talks that you've done, just incredible stuff. And just what you've delivered here today has been so, inspirational. But I think it's, the first thing that folks ought to do is check out the book because it really is, very powerful. What can they do to find out about that?
Well, we have a special bonus. There's 3 places I would send people. Number 1, liveitbook.com. So liveitbook.com. That's our standard book website. You'll see awesome endorsements about the book from Deepak Chopra, Brian Tracy, Chief Master Sergeant in the U.S. Air Force. We have some great people backing it up who love the work. So that's just the book site. There's also a special bonus that we put together, a 6-week bonus book club for people who took action and bought the book right when we put it out. And if you're listening to this, we'll give you access to that. And depending on how soon you listen to it, if you listen to this and immediately take action, you might be able to join us for the last couple of weeks live. If not, and it's down the road, you're welcome to listen to the recordings of that book club where I share extra content, bonus knowledge, bonus insights that wasn't quite able to fit in the book because we ran out of space. So I share all the extra bonus insight and information. And to get access to that, it's www.liveitbook.com/bonus, bonus. And that'll give you access to the bonuses there. And then the only other place I would send people is to JerickRobbins.com. It has our blog on there, and like you said, every single week we update a new episode of JRC TV, and it has fresh new content on love, relationships, travel, adventure, giving back, making a difference. And we try to keep that fresh and new, and we always listen to people who are writing in and what they're asking for, and we update that content regularly to ensure we're trying to answer some of the deepest life questions to help people be the happiest, healthiest, and most fulfilled version of themselves.
Well, I got to say, you are absolutely the definition of an influencer, and I want to thank you for coming on today and sharing this information and giving us such deep insight into into the book and even, the beyond, the stories beyond the book. So I want to thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate so much. As cool as we are and as much as we're up to, I am unbelievably humbled and grateful for people who take time to help us amplify our message to the world and help our book and our message reach even more people, because a lot of people need to hear it, and we're obviously on a mission to get it out there. So I'm incredibly humbled and grateful for you allowing us to have this space to share this message with the world. And I'm so grateful for every single person who's listening to this and took the time to tune in and hear what we're all about.
Fantastic. Folks, there you have it. Jairek Robbins, liveitbook.com. We'll have a post to that and also a post to that bonus link on the show post. So definitely check that out. It is something that can really make a huge, huge difference in not just your lives, but the lives of your family, friends, and beyond. So definitely check that out. And until next time on Influencers Radio, remember, you are the only real game changer.
You've been listening to Influencers Radio. To get all past shows and updates on future shows, visit influencersradio.com today or follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/influencersradio.